All right, my friends, welcome back. This is going to be part 21 of my presentation on the flood and Noah's Ark. And we're going to try to finalize this third theory on the transport theory that the plants and animals were transported to the Arctic locations and were buried there. That they didn't grow or live there, is that they were buried there. And so, again, as far as my take on it, I think this could explain some of the formations that have been found, but overall, can it explain why they have found animal and tropical vegetation at these locations? No. I don't want to put an umbrella answer on this and saying that this explains all of the plants and animals that have been found there. It just explains, as far as my take on it, this is just my take on it, it just explains some of the formations that they have seen out there, like we have found with the, on our last video, we looked at Specimen Ridge and how these trees appeared to be one, like as if a forest grew and then it was buried, and then a new forest had grown on top of that one, and then it was buried, and then a new forest grew on top of that one. And when you look at the geology of those areas, it looks like that exactly what happened. But when you look at the biblical world flood and how these log mats that we talked about, how they were, I mean, we're talking huge, gigantic log mats. We're going to continue with that here in this video, how they were floating around. And then after a while, these trees just start falling with the root ball first, landing, standing up. And then you got sediments laying down. Well, you got, tons of trees that are landing in the vertical position. Some are laying horizontal, but many are landing as if they had grown in that position, and that when they look at these trees, they can see evidence that, hey, something else happened here, because there's no roots on these trees. There's no roots. And in some areas, there's no soils underneath it. It was as if the tree had just landed there with the root ball, and then sediments laid around that. And so that's how you explain that. And so I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression that all of the plant life and animal life that we're going to still be discussing in Antarctica, even after this video, can be necessarily described away as with this theory here, with the transport theory. But it does explain how some of these trees that are found with no roots whatsoever have gotten where they are, and appears to have grown where they were. And so, again, this is just one of those theories there. But if you notice on the screen here, this again is the picture of the log mat in Spirit Lake in 2012. Now, the eruption at Mount St. Helens was back in May of 1980. So those trees, at least at 2012, were still there. And I'm sure there's probably many of them still there today. Again, from an eruption from 1980. And so, now in this one here, well, let's go back. Let's go back to that before I go to this next slide here. If you'll notice, all these trees out here, they don't have any bark on them. It appears they're all the same color, and they all have been rubbing up against each other, and their bark is off the trees. And not only that, but they don't have any branches. Now, I can't zero in on each and every single one of them, but many of these trees, guys, if they do have any branches on them, it's just nothing but a stub, because they've been broken off from hitting up against each other and rolling against each other. And so these branches are going to pop off of there. And so, but many of them are found like this right here. And let me just say, the ones that have been found, like at Specimen Ridge and stuff, they don't have any branches on them or any bark on them. Well, that's just like you see here, that's been popped off and broken off before they landed root ball first and then buried over sedimentation. And so you can see evidence of catastrophes that have happened in the past, and you can correlate them to things that had happened, even like the flood and all. We can see that. We can kind of put a puzzle together and to explain away. Of course, we weren't there, so we don't know 100%. That's the reason we call it a theory. But it sure, when you put the pieces together, it sure makes sense. It really does make sense. Now, the polystrate fossil trees is what we're going to start getting into. That's another thing that has been found that is quite amazing and quite, it gets the secular scientists kind of scratching their heads. But when you look at them in a biblical world flood, it's not really that hard to understand how such things could have happened. Because you got, again, this is the picture that I've showed you before. You got the trees floating around, they fall root ball first, and then you got the sediments that start to lay around it. Well, in secular thinking, these different sediment layers, they're going to think is over a period of time, even millions of years, for each sediment to lay down before the next one happened. And so but that word polystrate, when you think of polystrate fossils, you're thinking of poly, which means many, and then strata, polystrate fossils. This would be fossils that run through many layers. And so now, if there's a picture over to the right of a polystrate fossil, that's a fossil tree there running through many layers of strata. And so now polystrate trees are commonly associated with coal. Some early examples were discovered in the coal seams of England and Wales. Some of the logs were 30 feet tall. The Joggins Formation along the Bay of Fundy, Nova Scotia, Canada, there are at least 76 coal seams ranging from 1.5 to 5 feet thick. Vertical trees have been found in 63 levels or horizons, which is numerous polystrate trees and cast. The cast are mineralized shapes. That's what they mean by cast. And the tree isn't there, but it has turned into a mineral. Where it has been theorized that a forest was growing in place. Polystrate tree cast running through many thin organic rich layers, 39 feet tall. Uniformitarian scientists, that's your evolutionists, say that the coal seams and polystrate trees show growth, death, and burial of forest over at least 63 discrete periods of time. So that is the answer you're going to get from the evolutionist / uniformitarian scientist, or the uniformitarian thinking. The average rate of deposition, according to uniformitarian scientists, would be around 0.5 to 1 inch per 1,000 years. It would take 100,000 years to bury a 30-foot tree. Now, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, there is no way a tree is going to sit there for 100,000 years before rotting. It don't make any sense. Whenever you really start to look at some of this thinking, you can say that don't make any sense. But in a biblical world flood, when this tree had landed root ball first, and then you get the rapid burial of sediments around it, that makes sense. That makes sense because they have found trees upside down in the way that you're seeing it right now in that one picture. They have found trees, instead of root ball first, they're the other way. Now, what was it doing? Did it just get confused and was trying to find some light in the other direction? So you can see that. They have found vertical trees and invertical trees in the same areas together, which shows more of a catastrophe that happened, and these trees were buried. These trees were buried rapidly. Now, this is a polystrate fossil tree in sedimentary rock layers in Tennessee. I would love to go see this because I'm just one state over. But if you look where that arrow is, it's kind of hard to when you first see this picture, it's like, okay, where is it? And so right there is where that tree is. And look at it, guys. Now, when you look at this tree, you can see that it is going through different layers of strata. That tree did not grow through all them layers of strata, and that those layers of strata didn't take hundreds of or even thousands of years to cover that tree. That was from a biblical worldwide flood, an historical biblical worldwide flood. That's what happened to this tree. Now, I don't know if you can really see it real good, but if you go towards the bottom there, I'm not where it says photo was by Ian Juby. Ian Juby is an outstanding creationist speaker. He took this photo here, and if you'll notice right about where that is, it looks like it looks almost as if that may be the bottom of that tree, where it looks like it's starting to separate into roots and it just ends abruptly. I cannot verify this 100%. I'm not sure because it looks like there's a little separation there from the trunk of the tree, and then it has that one area, but it almost looks as if that may be where that root ball stopped at. I'm not sure. I'm just looking at the photograph, and that's just how my mind works. I'm always trying to look at the small little details. But going on, it says Charles Lyell in 1842 mentioned Joggins in his book Principles of Geology, saying the most wonderful phenomenon perhaps that I have ever seen. He claimed that Joggins was verification of his uniformitarian theory. Charles Darwin also mentioned Joggins in his 1859 On the Origin of Species. A spectacular but less known site of polystrate fossils is the Ginkgo Petrified Forest State Park in Washington. The layers are basalt lava flows with thin beds of other sediments between lava flows. Some of the trees are vertical and some buried in the basalt at an angle but do not appear to be buried. Massive petrified redwood stumps in a vertical position have been found in Florissant Fossil Beds National Monument in Florissant, Colorado, USA, at over 8,000 feet above sea level. These are probably the largest diameter petrified tree stumps in the world. One is more than 13 feet in diameter. In addition to the fossil trees, geologists have found 1,500 species of insects and spiders and 150 species of plants in the thin-bedded sedimentary rocks in the area. These organisms come from a wide range of climates and environments, indicating non-uniformitarian conditions. They could not have all been living together at the same location. And so, again, showing more of a possible that these things were carried to the location that they were found. Again, it's a theory of that. And so, because it very well could be that, again, when some of the things that we talked about before this theory here is that the world was much different and it could have been more of a temperate climate at the polar regions other than what they have today. But going on to that last paragraph, it says, in the coal mines north of Sutton, Alaska, it was discovered that many polystrate trees had not roots or soil. Notice that. Had not roots or soil. So those trees, I believe, were carried and they were dumped there during the flood. The fossil forest in the Badlands of Theodore Roosevelt National Park, North Dakota, there are hundreds of vertical tree stumps. The stumps are well exposed and have no roots or soils below the vertical stumps. Again, those trees were carried and dumped at that location. They did not grow where they were at. And so now this is a picture of the 13 this tree that is 13 feet in diameter. I wish they'd have stuck somebody standing near that thing. But At any rate, here is another tree stump, and notice that, guys. There's no roots or soil. Now there's soil right there, but right there where right there beneath the tree, there's no soil. Now somebody might say, well, maybe it was eroded away, which very well could be, but still, excuse me, it still does not explain that that tree does not have any roots whatsoever. That tree, with the others that are around it, were ripped up from another location and carried to that location and dumped. That's what happened with that area there. All right, let's stop right here. We got a good 15 minutes into it. I actually had more I was going to show, but when I looked at the clock, it said 15 minutes, and so I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off. And but we're going to continue on. The next video will definitely be the end video of this third theory of the transport theory. And we're going to start looking at more aspects, more interesting things about log mats, great big huge giant log mats, and some of the things, the ideas that have been proposed even about them, and some very unique things that you can see today about what they call floating islands. And so very unique. And so I'm going to be sharing some things about that I think you guys are going to find quite interesting. And but you guys take care. I hope you're learning something. I love you. And I hope the Lord blesses you real good. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.